We're getting rare insight from police officers about the challenges of fighting racism inside a department. A growing number of police departments in America's largest cities told us they've added implicit bias training. But hundreds of officers in multiple states have recently been exposed for racist social media posts attacking minorities and promoting racial stereotypes. Jeff Begay spoke to one St. Louis police sergeant whose department has officers at the center of that controversy. He continues our investigation into policing in America 5 years after Ferguson. Jeff, what did that officer tell you?
The St. Louis Metro police officer that you're about to hear from says the culture among her department's top brass is allowing bad cops to slip through the cracks. When we asked if the department had training to address possible racial bias, the answer wasn't clear. Do you think that there are white supremacists on the police force?
Yes.
You didn't even pause.
Have you seen some of the Facebook posts of some of our suspended officers right now? Yes.
Heather Taylor is an almost 19-year veteran on the St. Louis Metro Police Force. She points to the recent report by the Plainview Project, which flagged thousands of racist and derogatory social media posts, including some from 22 current St. Louis Metro officers like this one that compared Black Lives Matter to the KKK. As president of the Ethical Society of Police, a predominantly black local union, Taylor's mission is to root out racial discrimination among police. Protests in Ferguson took place about 10 miles from St. Louis Metro PD headquarters and led to changes in training there. SLMPD told CBS News in a survey that implicit bias training has been mandatory for officers once a year since October of 2014. That's 2 months after Michael Brown's death. Implicit bias training, they've had that here.
Yes.
Has it worked?
I think that's pretty obvious that it hasn't.
If implicit bias training is mandatory, it doesn't seem to have left an impression on Heather Taylor. Have you been through it?
No, it was optional.
Okay.
Lieutenant Cheryl Orange, a patrol officer for the department, says she doesn't remember taking it either. Wasn't it mandatory?
Not that I recall, but it may have been.
We've been trying to get SLMPD's police chief to comment on our CBS News investigation that found a majority of departments nationwide are adding training to address possible racial bias. Over a period of months, there have been phone calls, emails, and each and every time the police department has declined our request for interviews.
There's a change.
So we went to the man who hired the police chief. Jimmy Edwards is the public safety director for the city of St. Louis. We had an officer tell us she knows that there are white supremacists on the police force.
I'm not surprised. My job is to root that person out.
Implicit bias training, is it mandatory for all officers?
Yes, it is. It is mandatory.
We've talked to officers who don't remember taking implicit bias classes.
You know, well, everybody in the city of St. Louis have taken implicit bias training.
And they can't remember it?
I don't know. That's a good question for them.
That's odd.
It is odd.
Still, Edwards says use of force incidents are down in St. Louis City, which he credits to new training. But he also concedes police have a long way to go before he can assure a black mother he met that changes have taken hold in the department.
She asked me, can you change our police department? Because every time my little black boy encounters a police, I think one or two things is going to happen. That my child will lose his liberty and go to prison, or that my child will die. We have challenges, but we're overcoming those challenges a bit at a time.
Taylor says that should include better screening of applicants and breaking down what some have called the blue wall of silence, a term for police cover-ups of internal wrongdoing. Your fellow officers, they might see your comments and be offended. How do you go back to work after making comments like that?
Because when you know you're doing right, you can hold your head up. I don't think that all of our department is bad, but instead of complaining about me, how about you do something to change the culture that you know exists? It is still unknown whether any police training technique could impact trends in use of force. One reason is because there has never been a federal use of force database to study. But for the first time, the FBI is now creating one, and we're going to have an exclusive report on that tomorrow, including an interview with the man leading that effort.
Wow.
Some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
So difficult, it sounds like, to really make people change how they really feel. And I think that's the issue. You can mandate things all day long, but it's a cultural shift that has to happen.
Yeah.
Well, and that's true in police departments and in society overall, frankly. But we were surprised by how candid the officers that we spoke to were with us, even when the cameras were rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
And if part of the problem is actually just knowing that it still exists, then maybe that's at least the first step right
but
now.
you have to realize you may have a problem with your bias training if people can't remember taking that course.
Well, and that's what also surprised us, the fact that, there was this big push to get implicit bias training, but the question is it working? Is it making a difference?
Maybe counseling would help.
Jeff, thank you very much. And to see how police departments in your state responded to questions about training, including that racial bias training and de-escalation training, go to cbsthismorning.com. We have a state-by-state breakdown of the 155 police departments we surveyed.
You can watch more of Jeff's exclusive report tonight on the CBS Evening News and tomorrow on CBS This Morning. Jeff brings us an exclusive look at the FBI's new effort to track use of force across the nation for the first time. Plus, Jeff discusses what went into CTM's year-long investigation on today's CBS This Morning podcast. It's available wherever you like to get your podcasts.